mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 3, Episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Amazon series The Boys. Now, I'm going to do this as a non-spoiler version. That's kind of generally how I do the first episode of a new season or a new show, just to kind of give people an idea of like, okay, here's what this season is starting off like, here's what I think about it, and should I continue to want to cover this week to week, I'll get a little bit more in depth. I just want to say up front, whether or not I cover this week to week kind of relies on you guys. You know, the videos on this channel, it peaks and valleys. You know, I have videos that do really well. People are clamoring for more. And then I have videos that don't do so well. And it's not because they suck. It's just because, like, that show might not have the kind of content that is really bringing out my best work. You know, I'm better on stuff that, you know, it requires a deep dive, a little bit of analysis, a little bit more of a keener mind. And I'm not shitting on The Boys by any means. I fucking love this show, but you know, this isn't that. You know, I'm saying it's deeper than just, you know, mindless super violence, but it's not something that really is gonna require too much deep diving. Having said that, I love this show. I would like to cover it. It's just that this takes up so much time. So like if this video does some decent numbers and people are like, yeah, I want to see you cover this show. Maybe people who you know, watch a lot of my other videos that might be interested in me covering this show, say they want me to do it, then I probably will. But if this video doesn't do well, no one's really like, yo, we want to see you talk about this show, I'm probably not going to cover it. But Amazon did release the first 3 episodes today, so that does give you a good idea of what this season is going to be like, because there are only 8 episodes. So we're all, you know, after next week's episode, we'll already be halfway through this season. So I have a pretty good idea of what the show, what directions the show is going to be going this season. So I'm going to come on here and tell you guys, kind of give you a non-spoilery update on what this season is like, and then we can kind of just go from there. So I want to start by saying, like I said, I love this show. I still love this show after watching these first 3 episodes. If you're a fan of seasons 1 and 2, you're going to get more of the same here. I know it's super disappointing to have a show that you like and then it comes back, you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, this isn't even as good as the shit that I like. It's still the same show, man. So you're still going to love it. I love the over-the-top violence. Like, you know, I cover Succession. I cover Mayor of Easttown, Yellow Jackets, all kinds of shows that are under the banner of heaven, that are heavy, that have deep themes and big meanings and shit like that. But like, at the end of the day, I too love kind of like what I like to call like a popcorn show, where you can just kind of like sit back and chill and just be fully fucking entertained. That's kind of how I felt about Peacemaker this year. Peacemaker was like great fucking like just sit back and chill and have a good time kind of TV show. And that's what The Boys is. And I love this just brutal, over the top comic book stylish violence. Like I love seeing people pop. And it's better than saying that they explode, but they like pop people on this show. And I don't know, I just love that shit. Another thing I love about this show, and I don't think it gets enough credit for this show is really fucking funny. And it's not just funny in the sense of like, you know, Butcher calling people cunts all the time. Like that is funny, but like it's not just that kind of like base level of humor. This show has a lot of smart humor that I think a lot of people might miss at times. Like it's funny to an underappreciated degree. And that remains true in these first 3 episodes. There are plenty of times where I laughed, and it would be like weird shit, like background shit, sly little remarks that you can barely even hear. It's a very smart show when it comes to the humor. And I think that's something that's underappreciated here. And then we also have the characters, right? I think we all like all of the characters. Like, there are characters that you might like some more than others, but I think for the most part, we all have a connection to everybody on the team. You know, Huey, Mother's Milk, Butcher, Frenchie, Kimiko, everybody, right? But this show does a great job with its villains as well. The only problem with this show, and I actually was going to talk about this at the end. Well, no, I probably should say it for the end just because it'll probably be like, it'll dovetail well with me talking about the show. But I do have one gripe about the show, and this gripe did not really exist in season 1. it reared its head in season 2, and it seems like it's going to continue this season. But I'll get to that in a minute. So right now I want to talk about some of the plot lines that have come to the forefront in these first 3 episodes that kind of give us an idea of what direction we're going to go in the final 5. So Starlight is hosting a reality show called American Hero. It's a reality show contest, which is incredibly 2022 to have a reality show for this. It's a reality show to essentially backfill the lost 2 members of the 7. Starlight has a ex on this show named Supersonic, and this guy is fucking terrible. Like, terrible, like, in a good way, like, within the context of the show. Not like this is a shitty character. The character within the context of the show is, like, obnoxious. So, like, of course, with Starlight working so closely with an ex, and adding into the fact that this guy is such a fucking douchebag, of course Huey doesn't like this guy. I don't like this guy. But Huey's really jealous of their relationship. I'm not sure if they're going to take this in a direction where Starlight might actually rekindle something with this guy. I don't know if it's going to drive a wedge between Huey and Starlight. But then the closing to the 3rd episode reveals something else that could cause a problem in this relationship as well. So Starlight's relationships, as far as like her romantic relationships, but then also her relationships within what we'll refer to her as her job, her business, being in the 7. She, and speaking to that point, her job within the 7 has essentially is a new one. She's been promoted. She's the co-captain now, along with Homelander. And Stan Edgar kind of justifies this like, the people love you, Starlight. We need somebody like you at the forefront of this because people fucking hate Homelander after this whole thing of him falling in love with a Nazi. And apparently, this is also a reminder, not a reminder, but an addition to this statement. They've been kind of like on a peacetime for about a year. And during that time, Homelander has been on something of an apology tour for, like, you know, basically answering the question of, how are you, Homelander? How were you, Homelander, able to fall for a secret Nazi? So he's been dealing with that, and that is going to, I think, continue to drive a wedge in the team now, because you know Homelander doesn't want any fucking competition. He considers himself to be the guy, and then he's got Stan Edgar telling him, people don't, you don't do good in approval ratings. She does, so we need to pair you 2 up together. And if you've seen the show, you know Homelander's not going to be happy with that. So Starlight actually wants out of the 7, but she has to stay in for that reason. And then there's another reason that comes to the surface toward the end of the 3rd episode that makes her have to stay with the team as well. So a lot of complexity going on with Starlight. I feel like this show in general gives a whole lot of attention to Starlight and to Huey, which I think is the smart move. But you know, when you have a show with this many characters, it's interesting to note the amount of time, attention, and storyline and character detail and development that is given to each of the characters, because it kind of lets you know how the creators feel about the characters. Like, if you give a ton of attention to one character and not a lot of attention to another, then it's like, okay, well, we know that they're not that concerned with making this character interesting to me. But that's neither here nor there. Huey has been working with Victoria Newman, who we know from last season was the person who was popping everyone's heads. And he is now working at the, I'm going to look this up, look at this, FBSA, the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs. At the start of the season, he doesn't know that Victoria Newman is the person who was popping heads last season. That does come to light, but he spends a lot of, particularly that first episode, working with her, not knowing who she was, and then also within the nature of his job, essentially kind of like bossing Butcher around. So that's an interesting dynamic. We're not going to talk about where that's going to go, but you can imagine that's just like you can imagine sharing the spotlight is not going to be cool with Homelander. You can imagine taking orders from Huey is not going to be cool with Butcher. So, but that plays out. We also find out that Mother's Milk has a history. Well, no, actually, let me rewind. So in a quest to bring down Homelander, Butcher hears about the existence of a weapon that killed this character, Soldier Boy, who, if you've been paying any attention at all, you heard about the casting of this guy. It's Jensen Ackles from Supernatural. He's playing this new character, Soldier Boy, who, full transparency, we have only seen once so far, and it was in a flashback. So this character has not appeared in present day on the show yet after these first 3 episodes. But that's because we hear that he was killed by some special weapon. And apparently he was so powerful that Butcher believes if this weapon could kill Soldier Boy, that it could also kill Homelander. And I cannot call him Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy. I have to enunciate on that one. I don't want y'all to think that dancing rapper is on this fucking show, man. So we also find out that Mother's Milk has a history with Soldier Boy as well. This causes him to rejoin the team because in the 24 months, in the 12 months since the end of last season, Mother's Milk has kind of separated himself from the rest of the group, and you'll find out how that's been going for him in the first few episodes here as well. Another interesting development is that Vought has developed a compound V that's temporary. It only gives whoever takes it powers for 24 hours. Butcher gets his hands on it. I'm not going to say how, but it's still in a testing phase. So whenever Butcher decides to use this thing, there could be some side effects. I don't know. We'll see. But you got to think he's going to use it at some point, and it's probably going to not go too well. Homelander's been becoming more and more unhinged. Like I said, he doesn't like this idea of Starlight being a co-captain. He doesn't like the idea of Stan Edgar not really giving him any respect or any credit because of his ratings. He doesn't like having to apologize for over and over about Starlight, Stormfront. And he's kind of like getting, it's almost like he was like on a leash over these past 12 months that we didn't see. And now he's starting to break free of that leash. And he's getting back to like slowly like torturing people like he likes to do. He's becoming more and more unhinged, but after 3 episodes, he's not fully there yet, although he's very close. We're going to see Homelander exploding people pretty soon. So that's kind of an update on where the major pieces are positioned currently in these first 3 episodes. But the one thing that I talked about that I feel kind of just like, I really don't feel too good about this, is that with such a big cast, like I said, you can't give everybody equal attention. Season 1, I felt like they did a really good job of that, giving everybody adequate screen time. Maybe not equal, but adequate for the importance of their character. In Season 2, I felt like Deep and A-Train were done a real disservice. Like, we didn't really get to see much of them. And when we did, their storylines were not interesting at all. Like, they tried with A-Train. Deep was just like, I was not feeling much of what they did with Deep at all in Season 2. And unfortunately, it kind of seems like we're in that same direction here. Deep and A-Train still have not got a lot of screen time. By the end of episode 3, we get a pretty good idea of what's going to be happening with Deep. And it is interesting. So if it continues in this direction, they'll be giving Deep a little bit more interesting stuff to do. So we can start enjoying him again. Because Deep in Season 1 was an asshole, but he was entertaining to watch asshole. Season 2, not so much. So we'll see what happens with him in Season 3. They're doing this weird thing with A-Train where it's like, it seems like they might be wanting to make him like, they do this like heavy-handed racial storyline where like he's going to be out here like we own this city, like policing like dirty cops and shit like that. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but I'm not sure if that's going to be interesting or not. But it's still very clear that they are just not really committed to giving these guys adequate time to make them interesting. Keeping them with the 7 would have been best to keep them to keep them interesting because you can kind of like have a collective story for the 7. Pulling them away and keeping them separate from the group forces them to come up with their own story, their own separate storylines, and it seems like they just don't put too much effort into that. Granted, I haven't read the comics, so like these things can be pulled directly from the comics. Doesn't make it interesting television though. And since they have added new characters like this supersonic guy that is Starlight's ex and Soldier Boy, it looks like another character might be getting put on the back burner too, and that looks like Maeve. I think if I remember correctly, I felt like Maeve, excuse me, has always been a little shortchanged on this show, but only a little bit. Like she's been largely present. We see her in episode 1, and I don't think we see her again. I'm pretty sure Maeve doesn't even show up in episodes 2 and 3. So she's another one now that's kind of been pushed to the back burner. And then there's like this weird kind of side story with like Frenchie and this Russian chick. And I'm not sure how this is going to tie into the show, although we get a hint of that at the end of episode 3, how this could tie into the main plot. But I'm not really sure about that either. And again, the same thing they did with them last year. Like Frenchie and Kimiko just kind of seemed like they were a little bit away, like they had like their own kind of side thing away from the team. And yeah, I don't know if you want to do something like that, you have to give those characters a lot of attention because you want to make their storyline interesting if it's separate from everyone else's. And if you feel like you're just like, oh, we're gonna just give them something that's not that great, whatever, it's not a big deal, it hurts the show overall because then it's like when we see them on the screen, it's like, well, I don't care about this. Like, this isn't interesting to me. So I hope they do something to make these characters more interesting. If Maeve's just not going to be on the show, fine. But if they are going to keep her on the show and show her routinely, they got to do something and not just have her just show up in episode 1, do what she did, which was important, but then not even show her at all in episodes 2 and 3. So that's my only kind of complaint. But again, same show. If you like season 1 and 2, it's already very clear that season 3 has been given the same amount of care and effort the seasons 1 and 2 were, and it's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to it. There's also one thing before I wrap this up. There's also one thing that I think could be interesting as well, is that we find out some interesting backstory information on Victoria Newman, and I think that little bit of information could turn out to be really interesting going forward for the rest of the season when they start to tie this in with everything else. So there's a lot of interesting plot points out there that are going in directions that could be really entertaining. I just hope they put a little bit more effort into these characters that they generally don't put a lot of effort into, or at least have it as of late. Deep, A-Train, Maeve, Frenchie, Kimiko. Give them something a little bit more interesting to do. And I think the show can be great. I also wouldn't mind if there was even a little bit more violence. Like these 3 episodes have worked to kind of build this foundation for where the rest of the show where the rest of the season is going to go. But now, okay, I got a pretty good idea. Let's start like ratcheting up the violence a little bit. And to make no mistake, it's still violent, but I'm like, we can get a little bit more frequent with it. So, like I said, let me know if if the numbers do good, you don't have to let me know shit. But like if the numbers aren't doing all that great, and then you guys are like, hey, let's do this week to week. I want to get these deep dive spoiler reviews for this, like you do for everything else. Let me know in the comments. And if I like what I see, I'll see you guys next Friday for episode 4. Peace.